Hello, I'm Russell Hillegass, and I'll be your next orator. If everyone's ready, let's begin. William Wilberforce delivered his most famous abolition speech on May 12, 1789, when slavery was a common practice in Britain. This was not his first or last speech to Parliament, however, it is the most famous speech he delivered to them. We were all guilty. We ought to plead guilty. And I therefore depreciate every kind of reflection against the various descriptions of people who are more immediately involved in this wretched business. I must now speak on the transit of slaves to the West Indies. This, I confess, in my own opinion, is the most wretched part of the whole subject. So much misery condensed in so little of room is more than the human imagination had ever before conceived. I will not accuse the Liverpool merchants. I will allow them, nay, I will believe them to be men of humanity. And I therefore believe that if the wretchedness of any one of these many hundreds of people who are stowed on each of the ships should be brought before their sight, and remain within the sight of the African merchant, there is not one among them whose hearts could bear it. How can we bear to think of such a scene as this? One would think it had been determined to heap upon them all the varieties of bodily pain for the purpose of blunting the feeling of the mind. And yet, in this very point, the situation of the slaves has been described by Mr. Norris, one of the Liverpool delegates, and how it is our duty, therefore, not to trust to the reasoning of interested men and their way of coloring a transaction. Their apartments, says Mr. Norris, are fitted up as much for their advantage as circumstance will admit. The right ankle of one, indeed, is connected to the left ankle of another by a small iron fetter, and, if they be turbulent, by another about their wrist. After breakfast, they have water to wash themselves, while their apartments are perfumed with frankincense and lime juice. Before dinner, they are amused after the manner of their own country. The song and dance are promoted, and, as if the whole was really a scene of pleasure and dissipation, it is added that games of chance are furnished. Such is the sort of strain, in particularly Mr. Norris, which the Liverpool delegates gave evidence before the Privy Council. What then will the House think when, by the multiplied testimonies of other witnesses, the true history is laid open? The slaves, which are sometimes described as rejoicing at their captivity, are so wrung in misery that it is common practice to set sail at night, lest they should be sensible of their departure. The scantiness of both water and provision was suggested by the very legislature of Jamaica, and their annual report to the committee, to be a matter calling for the interference of Parliament. The song and dance are promoted. It had been more fair, perhaps, if he'd explained that word, promoting. The truth is that for the sake of exercise, these miserable wretches, loaded with chains, oppressed with disease and wretchedness, are forced to dance by the terror of the lash and sometimes by the actual use of it. I, says one of the other evidences, was employed to dance the men while the other danced the women. Such then is the meaning of the word promoted. It may be observed too that in respect to food, an instrument is sometimes carried out in order to force them to eat.
Which is the same sort.
Which is the same sort of proof in which they enjoy themselves in that instance also. As to their singing, what shall we say when we are told that their songs are songs of lamentation, which, upon their departure, are always in tears? In order, however, not to trust too much to the reasoning of interested men, I will call the attention of the House to one species of evidence which is absolutely infallible. Death, at least, is a sure ground of evidence. It may be found that the exclusive of those who perish before they set sail, no less than 12.5% perish in the passage. Another 4.5% die before the day of sail, which is only a week or two from the time of landing. A third more die in the seasoning, and this in a country exactly like their own, where they're healthy and happy, as some of the evidence would pretend. On the whole, however, there is mortality about 50%, and this among people who are not bought unless, as the phrase is with cattle, they are sound in wind and limb. How then can the House refuse its belief to the multiplied testimonies of these witnesses? Nay, indeed, what need is there of any evidence? The number of deaths speaks for itself and makes all such inquiries superfluous. As soon as ever I arrived thus far in my investigation, I confess to you, sir, so dreadful so irremediable, so wicked, that its wretchedness appeared that my own mind was made up for its abolition. A trade founded in iniquity, and carried on as this was, must be abolished. Let the policy be what it might, let the consequences be what they may. I, from this time forward, determined that I will never rest till I had effected its abolition.